This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Monday, March 3rd, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
U.S. lawmakers and the Trump administration speaking out about President Trump's Oval Office meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Hollywood's biggest night was not without its surprises.
I'm getting an award.
I'm Kevin Carr.
Wildfires erupt in the Carolinas.
That's what the community is.
I'm Clayton Neville.
A company located in Norway says no more fuel to the U.S. military, but the Norwegian government says not so fast. We'll explain.
It's a new month, and Wall Street will try to kick it off on the right foot after ending a volatile February with losses. I'm Jill Schneider.
Hundreds of protesters against Vice President J.D. Vance lined roadways Saturday in Vermont. I'm Julie Walker.
All ahead on America in the Morning. In the wake of Friday's Oval Office meeting heard round the world, Trump administration officials are defending President Trump's interaction with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, while Democratic lawmakers are reacting with incredulity and anger. John Stolnis has the latest from Washington.
You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
The fallout from the now epic Trump-Zelensky Oval Office meeting last Friday spilling out onto the Sunday shows. Secretary of State Marco Rubio telling ABC's This Week, Zelensky did not seem like a leader who was ready to make peace.
He found every opportunity to try to Ukraine-splain on every issue. Then he confronts the vice president. When the vice president says, the goal here is diplomacy, he immediately jumps in and challenges the vice president. Well, what kind of diplomacy?
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz on CNN's State of the Union criticized Zelensky for his attitude and demeanor.
You know, with the body language, the shaking of head, the kind of the arms crossed, we found it incredibly disrespectful.
And on NBC's Meet the Press, House Speaker Mike Johnson said Zelensky's attitude in the meeting was unacceptable.
He berated and interrupted his host, and instead of expressing gratitude for the extraordinary help that the U.S. has provided his country and effectively helped him stay alive and stay in power.
On ABC's This Week, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar knocked down the notion that Zelensky hasn't expressed gratitude for the hundreds of billions of dollars the U.S. has given Ukraine.
He said it hundreds of times. He presented a flag to Republicans and Democrats in Congress signed by soldiers on the front line saying thank you. So that was just an all-out lie that he has never thanked our country.
And Klobuchar says it was the president and vice president who behaved improperly in the meeting.
Vice President Vance, particularly, who was on the offense, who was berating President Zelensky, who simply was trying to explain that this was, in fact, we needed a strong security commitment from all of our allies to be able to have a lasting peace, which is something that President Trump says that he wants to see.
Moving forward, Waltz was asked if it will be necessary for Zelensky to resign in order for talks with Trump to move forward.
We need a leader that can deal with us, eventually deal with the Russians, and end this war. And if it becomes apparent that President Zelensky's either personal motivations or political motivations are divergent from ending the fighting in his country, then I think we have a real issue on our hands.
John Stolnis, Washington.
The motion picture Anora, the big winner at the 97th Academy Awards. There were some surprises in the wide-open field in Hollywood for Best Actor and Best Actress, as well as more than one foray into politics. America in the Morning's Kevin Carr has a recap.
First-time Oscar host Conan O'Brien made everyone a promise.
I am not going to waste your time tonight. 'Cause that would be insane.
However, the ceremony did not cooperate. After Best Actor Adrien Brody gave a 10-minute acceptance speech, the Hulu livestream shut down at the 10:30 mark, cutting off Sean Baker in the middle of his Best Director acceptance speech for Anora. Broadcast television viewers finished watching the Brutalist and Anora play ping-pong with wins. But it was Anora that took Best Picture, along with an apparent upset when Mikey Madison won Best Actress. Baker won 4 Oscars for Anora, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Editor, and Best Original Screenplay. This ties him with Walt Disney for winning the most statues in one year. Aside from these last-minute shenanigans, the night went relatively smoothly, though there were some swerves into politics, particularly when Daryl Hannah took the stage to announce Best Editing.
Slava Ukraine.
Kieran Culkin won Best Supporting Actor for A Real Pain, and Zoe Saldana won Best Supporting Actress for Amelia Perez.
I'm getting an award for a role where I got to sing and speak in Spanish. My grandmother, if she were here, she would be so delighted. This is for my grandmother, Argentina Cece. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Other notable moments included honoring the Los Angeles Fire Department and Morgan Freeman paying tribute to his co-star, Gene Hackman.
Gene always said, I don't think about legacy. I just hope people remember me as someone who tried to do good work.
I'm Kevin Carr.
Natural disaster, evacuations in the Carolinas. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning, Monday weather, and at the national map, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
The latest storm system to be moving through the United States is centered over the Intermountain West after having moved through a good portion of the West Coast states this past weekend. There will be some lingering showers across California this morning, but the activity will be more across Nevada into Idaho and Utah, as well as portions of Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. These areas will have rain and snow moving through with this system, and there could be a few inches in some of the higher elevations. As the system continues eastward into the west central plains tonight, it will tap into some moisture from the Gulf and produce some showers and thunderstorms, some of which could be strong to severe through parts of northern Texas into Oklahoma and even parts of southeast Kansas. These storms will have the potential for damaging winds, hail, and even a tornado. At the same time, some of the moisture will wrap back into the western side of the storm tonight, with moderate snow developing on the front range of the Rockies. These areas will have highs in the 60s today, but then an inch or two of snow tonight. The risk for severe weather will continue eastward as the week moves along, Tuesday into Wednesday, as that storm moves eastward as well. Before the storms arrive, there'll be a few precursor showers in parts of the central and southern plains, so most of the plain states will be dry and mild. We'll have highs in the 40s and 50s in the north, and then moving into the 60s in the central states and even 80s in parts of Texas. This is a good 10 to 20 degrees above the historical average. Meanwhile, farther east through the Great Lakes, northeast and mid-Atlantic, it is going to be a chillier day. That's the weather across America. Clouds and a shower around early in San Diego, California today, but some sun in the afternoon with a high of 60. After a cold start, Charlotte, North Carolina will have plenty of sunshine and warm to a high of 57. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Evacuations have been ordered after more than 170 wildfires erupted across parts of the Carolinas. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest.
South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster declared a state of emergency and a statewide burn ban in place. Fire crews in Horry County near Myrtle Beach evacuated several neighborhoods, and residents in the Carolina Forest area are asked to be vigilant and ready to evacuate if needed. Beach communities rallying around each other. These South Carolinians spoke with ABC 15 News in Myrtle Beach.
I started out from off of 501 and 17 bypass, saw the big fire, and I just felt on my heart I needed to come up this way.
You make 5 phone calls and 40 people's here. You know what I mean? That's what the community is.
In North Carolina, the U.S. Forest Service said that fire crews are working to contain multiple fires burning on more than 400 acres in 4 forests across the state, the largest about 300 acres. The cause of the fires in the Carolinas are still under investigation, but windy and dry conditions believed to be a factor. I'm Clayton Neville.
Norway has had to step in after a private Norwegian marine fuel supplier said it would no longer fuel U.S. Navy vessels. Fox News is reporting that the company, called Holtbach Bunkers, posted on its social media that due to the fallout from the meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump, they would not serve any U.S. military ships at ports in Norway. Last year, the fuel company sold over 800,000 gallons of fuel to U.S. military vessels. Norway is a member of NATO, like the U.S. The Norwegian government made clear it has no plans to allow any cutoff of supplies to the American military or American-flagged ships. When we return on America in the Morning, GDP negative growth and rest in peace Skype after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. With the Monday Report covering for Jessica Ettinger today, here's CNBC's Jill Schneider.
Wall Street opens this morning after wrapping up a rocky month. The Dow gained 601 points on Friday, its first positive session in 3, and posted its best week since January 2025. The S&P 500 added 92 points. The Nasdaq jumped 302 points, but still had its worst week since September. All of the major indexes finished February in the red. Markets had a brief sell-off on Friday after a contentious Oval Office meeting between President Trump, Vice President Vance, and Ukrainian President Zelensky. Trump accused the Ukrainian leader of not being ready for peace as long as the U.S. was involved in talks about ending the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. Early economic data for the first quarter of 2025 is pointing towards negative growth. That, according to a Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta measure. The central bank's GDP Now tracker indicates that gross domestic product is on pace to shrink by 1.5% for the January through March period. Fresh indicators showed consumers spent less than expected in January, in part due to bad weather. Nvidia is back in the $3 trillion club. Shares gained 4% Friday, still down 7% for the week, but that was enough to put its market cap back above $3 trillion. Adam Benjamin is a portfolio manager at Fidelity Investments. He points out this volatility is nothing we haven't seen before.
I think it will be a bumpy ride, but I think what people need to realize is this is really hard technology. They struggled with Blackwell back in the fall. That's now in full production, and they're moving forward. And this technology is going to have different periods of life to it, and people need to, get used to that.
The housing market has had a rough start to 2025. Prices are high and still climbing. Existing sales hit a record low. New home sales fell sharply, and inventory is on the rise. Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi says add it all up, and the housing market is in a deep freeze.
It just doesn't make any sense to sell your home, extinguish your mortgage at 4%, go buy another home and get a mortgage at 6.8. It just doesn't work economically. So even though inventories are up, they're very, very low by historical standards. And so there's, until we see mortgage rates come in closer to 6 and even into the 5s, I just don't think this market's going to come back to life to any significant degree.
Skype is logging off. Microsoft announced Friday it's shutting down the 21-year-old calling and messaging service in May. Skype gained attention in the early 2000s, giving people a way to talk without paying the phone company. But it stumbled in the 2010s as people adopted smartphones, and it didn't make a real resurgence during the pandemic when Zoom took off. On today's watch list, some economic data on tap. We'll get manufacturing PMI, ISM manufacturing, and construction spending. Ford will report its February sales. Morgan Stanley's Tech, Media, and Telecom Conference kicks off in San Francisco. And the NABE Economic Policy Conference continues in Washington, D.C.
Jill Schneider of CNBC. When we return on America in the Morning, big lottery winners under investigation after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Following the tense meeting at the White House, Vice President J.D. Vance and his family left Washington for a planned family ski trip. However, as correspondent Julie Walker reports, crowds gathered and extra security was needed near the Vermont ski resort where Vance and his family vacationed.
Hundreds of protesters against Vice President J.D. Vance the day after an Oval Office blowout over Ukraine lined roadways in Vermont, where he's on a family ski vacation. Many held Ukraine support signs, others Palestinian and immigrants' rights signs. Protester Tekla Van Hoven told WCAX Vance needs to
ski Russia because J.D. Vance has no friends in Vermont, but he's got lots of them in Russia, so he should go there for vacation.
There were also protesters on the slope at Sugarbush, where Vance was skiing with his family. The resort says it was not disruptive. A small number of supporters of Vance and President Trump also showed up Saturday with a welcome rally. I'm Julie Walker.
Trouble from the Lone Star State as two of the biggest lottery jackpots in Texas history are under investigation over claims that the winners may have benefited from more than just good luck. Lisa Dwyer reports.
The Texas lottery is facing mounting scrutiny from state officials over how the winners of an $83 million jackpot and a $95 million jackpot prize in 2023 came about purchasing their odds-defying tickets. Part of the issue lies with couriers, the companies that purchase lottery tickets for customers remotely and do not have any regulatory oversight or licensing requirements in Texas. While Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has launched his own investigation on top of one called by Republican Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas lottery is still in full swing, and residents will be allowed to use courier services until the state's Lottery Commission changes the rules by banning their use, which is expected to happen in April. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
America in the Morning for Monday, March 3rd, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour, Europe planning to go it alone strategy for Ukraine.
Howard Lutnick says he could take government spending out of his agency's reports on the gross domestic product. I'm Julie Walker.
New tariffs on Canada and Mexico are coming tomorrow, promises the White House. But how much? I'm Richard Johnson.
An increasing amount of urgency surrounding a budget bill in D.C. I'm Clayton Neville.
Rubio authorizes military aid for Israel. Dust in the wind may have led to a deadly Arizona crash. And the latest on the health of Pope Francis.
Virtual flavors are coming to a headset near you. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
Back after these messages. A check of the nation's weather on America in the Morning. Here's the Monday forecast with AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
For the Great Lakes, Northeast, and Middle Atlantic, it is going to be a chillier day, though not quite as cold as it was on Sunday. There will be plenty of sunshine throughout the region with highs in the teens and 20s in northern New England and 30s and 40s for most of the Great Lakes into the rest of the Northeast, and then warming into the 60s and 70s in the Southeast. For most places, this is near the historical average for early March. In the Plains states, there'll be some storms coming, but much of the day is going to be dry with just a few showers through the central and southern plains. Highs will range from the 40s and 50s in the north and warm to the 50s and 60s in the central states and even 80s in a good part of Texas. This is 10 to 20 degrees above the historical average. Now getting to the latest storm system moving through the United States, it is centered over the Intermountain West. This will still produce some showers along the west coast, mainly in California, but most of the activity from this system will be across Nevada into Idaho and Utah, as well as portions of Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. These areas will have rain and mountain snow with this system, and there could be a few inches in some of the higher elevations. As we mentioned earlier, this storm continues eastward, and then it will produce some showers and heavier thunderstorms tonight, some of which could be some strong to severe thunderstorms, and this will run through northern Texas into Oklahoma and even parts of southeast Kansas. These storms will have the potential for damaging winds, hail, and even a tornado. At the same time, moisture will wrap back into the western side of the storm tonight, with moderate snow developing along the front range of the Rockies. These were areas that were going to have highs in the 60s today, and then an inch or two of snow tonight. And we'll have to watch for severe weather development here moving eastward through the rest of the week. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Following the explosive meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump at the White House, members of the European Union met for Sunday's security summit to address the war in Ukraine. As correspondent Donna Warder reports, Britain, France, and Ukraine have agreed to work on a ceasefire plan for the war with Russia, which could include sending peacekeepers into eastern Ukraine. But questions remain as to how effective their plan would be without U.S. involvement.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio tells ABC's This Week that peace can only come to Ukraine if Russian President Vladimir Putin is involved in the negotiations.
The only way it ends is if Vladimir Putin comes to a negotiating table. And right now, President Trump is the only person on earth who has any chance whatsoever of bringing him to a table to see what it is he would be willing to end the war on. Now, maybe their claims or what they want, their demands will be unreasonable. We don't know, but we have to bring him to the table.
As European leaders gather in London Sunday to shore up support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is slamming the idea of European peacekeepers in Ukraine. Lavrov says European peacekeepers in Ukraine would continue to incite Kyiv to wage war against Russia. And he says that just as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was brought to power on bayonets, they'll now want to prop him up with their bayonets in the form of peacekeeping units. But Lavrov says that will mean that the root causes of the conflict in Ukraine will not disappear.
We've agreed that the UK, France and others will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting. Then we'll discuss that plan with the United States.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says his country will provide more arms so that Ukraine can defend itself against Russia.
The UK signed a £2.2 billion loan to provide more military aid to Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. And today I'm announcing a new deal which allows Ukraine to use £1.6 billion of UK export finance to buy more than 5,000 air defence missiles.
Following Sunday's summit with other European leaders, Starmer said the UK, France and others will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting and then take that plan to the US so they can all, quote, take it forward together, end quote. I'm Donna Warder.
The Trump administration may exclude government spending from GDP, which in effect would obscure the impact of cuts made by the Department of Government Efficiency. Correspondent Julie Walker reports Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, speaking on Fox News Sunday Morning Futures, says that government must become more transparent for the American people.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says he could take government spending out of his agency's reports on the gross domestic product.
You know, the Commerce Department runs the statistics of GDP. You know, the governments historically have messed with GDP. They count government spending as part of GDP. So I'm going to separate those two and make it transparent.
There are growing questions about whether the spending cuts pushed by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, could cause a recession.
When we balance the budget of the United States of America, interest rates are going to come smashing down. When he produces the energy that is necessary, energy prices are going to come smashing down. Inflation is going to come smashing down, and our economy is going to explode.
Speaking on Fox News, Lutnick said he would change GDP to make it transparent.
If the government buys a tank, that's GDP. But paying 1,000 people to think about buying a tank is not GDP. That is wasted inefficiency, wasted money, and cutting that while it shows in GDP, we're going to get rid of that. We're going to show you how that is.
The Commerce Secretary was echoing Musk's arguments made Friday on X that government spending does not create value for the economy. Doing so could potentially complicate or distort a fundamental measure of the U.S. economy's health. Government spending is traditionally included in the GDP because changes in taxes, spending, deficits, and regulations can impact the path of overall growth.
This is going to be the best economy anybody's ever seen, and to bet against it is foolish.
I'm Julie Walker.
The White House is again promising that the U.S. will impose new tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China starting tomorrow. But as for how much, the new Commerce Secretary hinted that there may be wiggle room. Details from correspondent Rich Johnson.
A Friday statement from the White House said the U.S. will impose 25% tariffs on most imports from Canada and Mexico and a 10% additional tariff on goods from China until what's labeled the extraordinary threat posed by illegal aliens and drugs is alleviated. But will it really be 25%?
That is a fluid situation. There are going to be tariffs on Tuesday on Mexico and Canada. Exactly what they are, we're going to leave that for the president.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says they're happy with how both Mexico and Canada have helped secure the borders, but they are still not doing enough to stop the flow of the ingredients used to make fentanyl, ingredients that mostly come from China. That, Lutnick says, has gotten worse, despite old promises from China.
In 2019, the Chinese told President Trump at that time that they would put the death penalty on anybody who made fentanyl. And today, they're giving the maximum subsidy they possibly can to the people making those ingredients.
Lutnick's comments courtesy of Fox News. Meanwhile, Canada's Minister of Trade, Anita Anand, tells the CBC,
"We have continually said that we will meet any Trump tariffs dollar for dollar, and we will retaliate."
And the sentiment among Canadians?
I think we should tell him to stick it.
I'll fight back. Definitely have reciprocal tariffs.
Fight back.
Nearly 3/4 of Canadians responding to a new survey say their government should fight back with counter tariffs, and more than half say they intend to reduce their purchases of U.S. goods. I'm Rich Johnson.
When we return on America in the Morning, government shutdown looms and English, now our nation's official language. Those stories and more after these messages. America in the Morning continues. I'm John Trout. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, invoking emergency authorities, announced the U.S. is sending another $4 billion in weapons to Israel. This after the Trump administration earlier in February sent an arms package to Tel Aviv. Both shipments come following a partial arms blockage imposed during the Biden administration. Rubio's announcement comes 2 days after the State Department said it has approved the potential sale of nearly $3 billion in bombs, demolition kits, and other weaponry to Israel. Since taking office, the Trump administration has approved nearly $12 billion in major foreign military sales to the Israeli government. Some of the weaponry will not be delivered until 2026. There is growing urgency in Washington surrounding a budget bill. With a government shutdown deadline in less than 2 weeks, President Trump will address a joint session of Congress tomorrow night. With more, here's Correspondent Clayton Neville.
There's a March 14th deadline to avoid a partial government shutdown. Last week, the House passed a budget resolution to fund the government, but Democrats are not on board with that plan, specifically pushing back on alleged Medicaid cuts.
Everything we care about is under assault. The economy is under assault. The safety net is under assault.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Donald Trump, the administration, and House Republicans are hurting the American people.
Oklahoma Republican Senator James Langford told NBC's Meet the Press that the GOP is committed to cutting waste and fraud.
Between Medicare and Medicaid, we have, according to government records right now, the Government Accountability Office, almost $100 billion in what they're called either fraud or waste, or just we don't know where it went.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke with Fox News.
There is no daylight between House and Senate Republicans. We are all on one big team with the same mission, and that is to deliver the America First agenda, and that is what we are doing in earnest now.
The GOP proposal would extend President Trump's 2017 tax cuts. It also allocates $300 billion for spending on things like border security and defense. I'm Clayton Neville.
Arizona State Police are investigating after 4 people were killed, 8 others hurt, 2 of those critically, following a 12-vehicle pileup. It happened on Interstate 10 near the town of Tonopah. The Arizona Department of Public Safety says that blowing dust across the highway may have led to the pileup and that several of the vehicles caught fire. The National Weather Service in Phoenix did issue several dust storm warnings for that area around the time of the crash. They've also issued a blowing dust advisory for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas through tonight. President Trump signs an executive order which now makes English the nation's official language. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
Lawmakers in Congress have tried for decades to do that, but failed. The president's order will let government agencies and groups getting federal funding decide whether to keep offering documents and services in languages other than English. That would rescind Bill Clinton's mandate requiring they do so. Within hours of the president taking office last month, his administration took down the Spanish language version of the official White House website. It said at the time it was committed to bringing the Spanish version back online. It was not as of this morning. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Virtual flavors are about to tempt your taste buds without any calories or even food. VR tasting is about to become real. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
According to a study posted on SciTechDaily.com, there is a new technology ready to transform virtual reality, and it's right on the tip of your tongue. The device is called eTaste, and it uses sensors and wireless chemical dispensers to create the sensation of flavor remotely. These sensors detect key molecules like glucose and glutamate, which correspond to the 5 basic tastes of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. According to one of the researchers, Jinhao Li, tastes can also be combined, so based on the digital instruction, you can choose to release one or several different tastes simultaneously. Scientists have tested the device in VR, and it shows promise in helping them understand how tastes are expressed in the brain. News from the president about a cryptocurrency reserve has sent Bitcoin and Ethereum prices skyrocketing, with Bitcoin over 94,000 and Ethereum at 2486. For more tech news, visit chuckpalm.com.
Monday Sports is in. Here's our Robert Workman.
The best team in the NBA, the Cavaliers, won their 10th game in a row, 133-129 in overtime over the Blazers. DeAndre Hunter had 32 points as Cleveland becomes the first team to 50 wins this year. Thunder spanked the Spurs 146-132. Jalen Williams had a career-high 41 points for the West leaders, while the top scorer in the association, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, added 31. Celtics turned back the Nuggets 110-103. Knicks overcame a 19-point deficit to get past the Heat 116-112 in overtime. Lakers swept the weekend set from the Clippers. Timberwolves blocked out the Suns. Anthony Edwards had 44 points. Pacers outran the Bulls. Raptors nipped the Magic, and the Pelicans beat the Jazz. Hockey, the Rangers shut out the Predators 4-0. Jonathan Quick snuffed out 34 shots on goal. The Golden Knights scored both of their goals in the third to down the Devils 2-0. 25 saves for Aiden Hill. The Wild blanked the Bruins 1-0. Philip Gustafson made 28 saves. Coach John Hines.
You need a game-winning save here or there, and tonight he did it. He held serve when we needed saves. He came up with some big ones, and that's what we need from him.
Elsewhere, the Stars battered the Blues. The Hurricanes doused the Flames in overtime. Sebastian Aho with his 5th OT winner this year, and the Maple Leafs shaded the Penguins in OT for their 5th straight win. College basketball, number 8 Michigan State whipped number 11 Wisconsin for the Spartans' 5th straight win, the last 4 over top 25 teams. And March Madness is officially underway, though it came in more like a lamb with 2 first-round games in the Atlantic Sun Conference Tournament on Sunday, the first of 31 conference tournaments going for automatic bids to the big dance. That's Monday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. When we return on America in the Morning, minimum wage hiked, fast food workers lose their jobs. That and more after these messages. This is America in the Morning. They're making more, but with less jobs available. That's the findings of a new report after California hiked the minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 an hour. The Berkeley Research Group found not only were there 10,700 jobs lost between June 2023 and June 2024 in the fast food worker sector, a figure backed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But prices at the establishment soared by 14.5% after the new minimum wage became law. One restaurateur told Fox News Digital that in order to keep up with the minimum wage requirement, businesses have cut down on their menu size, outsourced some kitchen labor, and utilized AI for back office management in an effort to save money to pay the higher wages. But now word comes of an adjustment of that $20 an hour pay. The Restaurant Business Magazine is reporting that the California Fast Food Council is considering increasing the minimum wage to $20.70. Pope Francis remains hospitalized in Rome. His condition has been upgraded to stable after being removed from a ventilator. Correspondent Tricia Thomas reports.
The Vatican says that Pope Francis slept through the night without any crisis. He got up and he drank a coffee. This is according to Vatican officials after what was a frightening incident yesterday when he had a coughing fit that caused him to vomit, and he inhaled some of the vomit into his lungs. That necessitated a bronchoaspiration, which is sort of a suctioning of his lungs that doctors had to do. They say they need 24 to 48 hours just to see what the result is of this incident. The Pope apparently was collaborative and lucid throughout. It remains a very complex situation as the Pope continues to struggle with this pneumonia in both of his lungs.
Correspondent Tricia Thomas. In case you missed it, a rocket lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center toward the moon and hopes to become the first private company to successfully land on the moon's surface this Thursday for a second time. Following the story, here's correspondent Ben Thomas.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff. Go, Falcon, go into ignition.
A SpaceX rocket blasting off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center,
Beautiful, it's pitching down.
carrying, among other spacecraft, a lunar lander from the private company Intuitive Machines.
You can see IM-2 Nova C lunar lander named Athena floating away from Falcon 9's second stage.
The 15-foot Athena is aiming to land close to the moon's south pole, and then send a drone that will hop into a nearby crater that never sees the sun in a hunt for frozen water. It will be the first up-close peek inside one of the many shadowed craters that dot both the moon's poles. Audio courtesy Intuitive Machines, NASA, and SpaceX. I'm Ben Thomas.
That's our show for today, Monday, March 3rd, 2025. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.